Hi everyone, we're here at demonstrations in front of a Planned Parenthood center, a Planned Parenthood clinic here in New York City. And here we have people who are standing in support of Planned Parenthood and in support of abortion. And here we have people who are against Planned Parenthood. And we have been here for a few hours now, live streaming for you, and you can check the earlier live stream on our Facebook page. But right now we're going to have a dialogue between two women, one woman who represents this group of protesters and another woman who represents this group of protesters. And we're bringing them together to have a dialogue about this issue. No one has really crossed the lines here. We thought it would be really interesting to see the discussion between two people who represent either side of this debate. So we're headed over to chat with Jen. Hi Jen, how are you? We're live with our New York Times audience. Do you want to do a quick introduction about who you are and why you're here?
Sure. I'm Jen Rush. I'm here with New York City for abortion rights. We came together to plan this counter-protest in defense of Planned Parenthood so that the people who oppose a woman's right to choose don't get their message across uncountered.
Thank you. Okay, so let's head over and they haven't met yet, Jen and Jess, so we're going to come over and bring them together. 1 second. And let's have Jess do her intro. Hi Jess, this is Jen. Hi. And Jen did her quick little intro of why she's here. Can you do your quick little say hello to our audience and say why you're here?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, somebody is...
Sorry, you got to step beyond the barrier.
Oh, sure. Oh, no, we can't be behind that barrier. Let's walk in this direction. Why don't we come this way? Let's walk this way. Great. Hi, can you do your quick little intro of why you're here?
Yeah, hey, I'm Jess, and I'm here because I'm pro-life, and I believe that life should be respected in every single stage. Yeah.
Okay, great. Ladies, so why don't we start by asking, what do you think it is that you both fundamentally disagree on more than anything else?
You can go first.
Sure. I think the fundamental disagreement is about whether we believe that women should have full autonomy and the power to control their own bodies, without which they can't be equal.
I thought that was actually an interesting question because I actually feel that if you dig deep, there is a lot in common. It's just I think we differ on the way to get there. I am totally for autonomy and independent women, strong women, women who can lead. But I think the way to promote that looks very different. I think that's where we disagree. Yeah.
What are your thoughts about, for example, abortion in cases of rape, the rape of the woman?
I believe in the case of rape, women should have the right to an abortion. I believe that women should have the right to an abortion for any reason that they choose. I don't think you can have equality. I don't think you can have strong women unless you can control your own body. And women have always had abortions since the beginning of time in one way or another. The question is whether those abortions are safe, whether they're legal, and whether everyone has access to them, regardless of income or race.
I guess I kind of touched on this earlier, but definitely I think rape is a terrible situation. It's dehumanizing, it's violent. It should never, ever be the case, if we were in an ideal world. That said, what if Michelangelo was conceived in rape? What if Donatello was, conceived in rape? Bill Gates, I'm not saying that they were, but I guess the idea I'm trying to get at is that there is much light that can come from a very, very dark place. And often, okay, we're talking about hypotheticals here, but I had never looked into the stories of women who had conceived in rape, and I think it's so important to look to the person, to listen to their story, because I don't know what it's like. I need to hear other people who have gone through that, and a lot of women feel that their child conceived in rape has brought light to the violence perpetrated against them and has redeemed that. Otherwise, a lot of women who have gone through abortions after rape, it's just another act of violence against themselves. A lot of other people are able to sweep it under the rug, no, your uncle didn't rape you, there's no proof. The child can be that proof and bring the crime to light. I think there is a lot of We have to be careful about, condemning the violent act and realizing that there is good that can come from evil. Yeah.
I just have to say that is for a rape survivor to determine for herself. If a rape survivor thinks that good will come by having a child and carrying it to term, then that is her choice. But if a rape survivor thinks that an abortion is the best choice for them, then they should be able to make that choice. And it is not listening to rape survivors. It is not listening to women to deny them the legal right to choose and a safe right to choose. And particularly with rape survivors who are in the most vulnerable position and have already had their control over their own body stripped from them, to have that doubly taken away is an unimaginable violence. And the fact that the supposedly pro-life movement, which I would call a pro-birth movement, is willing to support abortion restrictions, even in the case of rape, I think just says how fundamentally anti-woman it is and how it prioritizes the potential life of an unborn child over the real human life of an existing woman.
I guess I just have to respectfully disagree. I think there's a lot of valid points there. I definitely think that it's terrible, again, to expect, to even understand, what that woman is going through. She is in an incredibly vulnerable point in her life. But I guess it's assumed that, because people are pro-life, they're simply pro-birth. And I mean, I admit that the movement, there are cases where it seems as if that's it. But for me, I don't, I think that making sure that life can happen is the first step, but it cannot end there. We are full humans, we have, life continues past the womb, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And me being pro-life doesn't simply mean I'm pro-birth. I'm just trying to make sure that we can at least take that first step so then we can continue to take more steps past that.
If you oppose legal abortion and say that you're not solely pro-birth, in a context in which welfare rights have been stripped, in which food stamps are being cut, in which people cannot access health care, if you are willing to restrict abortion in a society that already has those conditions, then you are only pro-birth, because that commitment is not there. And the reality is that the people who are pushing these laws in Congress to defund Planned Parenthood, restrictions on abortion, first of all, are primarily men, and second of all, are mostly the same people who are for drug testing recipients of food stamps. They're the same people slashing Medicaid budgets. They're the same people attacking social services. They're the same people promoting the school-to-prison pipeline. They're the same people supporting the police who are a presence attacking our young black men in particular, but young black men and women. This is a society that is hostile to children and is hostile to the people who raise those children, especially the most vulnerable among us who have the least means. There's no way to support abortion restrictions without simultaneously saying that you are depriving women of their rights, and particularly, again, women of color, immigrant women, poor women, women who rely on social services. Those are the people who will be harmed the most by these restrictions. Rich white women will always find a way to have abortions. It's the people who can't get those who are the ones who will die in the back alley abortions, which is what the stakes are if we go back to the days before Roe v. Wade. And that really is the stakes, is are we willing to have an epidemic of women dying trying to get the right to control their own bodies because it's denied in the 21st century.
And I just want to gently push back on some of those points right there. You had brought up violence perpetuated against the most vulnerable. I agree, and I think the most vulnerable too include children who can't even support themselves quite yet. People in the womb. The other thing too, though, that you mentioned, I think is quite compelling, is the violence against people of color, people of low socioeconomic status. If you look at the statistics, Planned Parenthood is very accessible by communities of color, low-income communities, and actually a majority of their abortions are provided for people of color. That said, it basically amounts to eugenics. Here are people who are in impoverished conditions, who have very restricted opportunities to climb out of the situations that they're in, and And okay, well, that's a burden. So let's provide ways to make sure that there can't be more of them. If you look back to it, like, that's what it is. Like, the most, like, yes, many black men, black women have been killed by, violence and police crimes. But if you look at the amount of black children who have been aborted, it exceeds the number of all those deaths combined. And so I think I am, for making sure that people are not, victim to their circumstances. I want people to be able to move beyond the straining circumstances they find themselves in, but I don't think abortion is the way. I studied earth science in college, and a lot of that was involved with environmental sustainability. That was a lot of the stuff that we studied, and we were always challenged to, dig to the root cause of the problems that manifest themselves. I think abortion is a bandage solution to a lot of the very valid, very important concerns that you had brought up. Those things should not exist in a society. People should be able to thrive and flourish, but is abortion really going to fix it? No, I actually think it perpetuates the cycle. And so, I think just like being able to, like, to be honest, like in college, I really didn't have a stance one way or the other, pro-life, pro-choice, like it was up to you. But a friend like challenged me to look at the facts, look at the numbers, and then base my conclusion on what I had found. I had the freedom to choose that. I had the freedom to go look at the facts, and after going through those facts, had come to the conclusion myself that, just abortion is an act of violence, particularly perpetuated against communities of color. They're saying, like, okay, well, you're stuck in these poor circumstances. You're stuck, without a job. You're stuck, like, in a society that just, like, doesn't value you as a person. So, and we don't value your child either.
One question that we've gotten a lot from the audience is, like, what do you consider a person? I'm guessing there might be some disagreement there. Like, when is a person a person? And we'll start with you because you haven't chatted in a while.
So I think a person is a person when it is born, when it is a human being. But I think that is actually the wrong debate. And I just want to take a minute to say that I think saying that abortion is violence perpetrated against people of color is incredibly cynical. A majority of people of color in this country, of black women, support the right to choose. And you say that in college you went through the facts and you questioned things and you made your own choice, and yet you would deny other women the ability to make that choice for themselves. In Arkansas, they're introducing legislation that would allow a husband to sue his wife not to have an abortion. I think that eugenics, if you want to talk about eugenics is when black and Puerto Rican women in this country were forcibly sterilized, which happened in mass numbers in the 70s, and I oppose that. And I think full reproductive rights has to mean the right to bear a child if you choose. Eugenics is when, because you have social services or because you have a criminal record, they put you on long-term birth control or sterilize you against your wishes. That happens in this country. And the very same people sponsoring legislation to take away our right to choose are the same people who sponsor legislation, who or enact legislation that would control the reproductive choices of poor women and women of color. And so that really, it is not for the pro-life movement to decide if black women have babies and carry pregnancies to term or not. That is for black women to choose for themselves. This is a country that was built on slavery, in which black women's bodies were valued for their ability to reproduce. Many of those children born actually of rape at the hands of slave masters, they've been deprived of that choice, and to continue to argue for a deprivation of that choice, I think just plays into that entire history, really, of taking away control over one's body.
So I guess to answer the question that was asked, I actually think it is the right question to be asking. This is a very multifaceted issue, right? I hear you about women being able to make, be self-determined, to make choices for themselves. At the same time, I think every person should be able to, make choices for themselves. In the same way that perhaps an unplanned pregnancy, a mother wasn't expecting a child to be in that womb, that child didn't expect to be in that womb themselves. I believe, life begins at conception. How did I get to that conclusion? I mean, would we say, a lot of people, push back. Some friends of mine have pushed back. It's like, well, like they're not viable on their own. How could they be a life? I mean, an infant isn't viable on their own. You just leave them there. They can't take care of themselves. So what's the difference between an infant and two cells? If viability is the line, where do we draw it? I think it's a slippery slope. I think if we start making like concessions or trying to figure out, or like ableism, right? Like, oh, when you're able to like function on your own, like what makes the difference between something that's two cells and an infant versus me versus someone who's elderly? Like, you would never say, oh, because an elderly person can't do all the things that they used to be able to do on their own, they're worth less. Why so for something in the womb? And so when it comes down to that, I think it becomes a question of now, not necessarily the woman's right to choose. Like the woman chose to. Women should definitely have the freedom to choose many, many things. But I think once there's another life in there, it's not my choice to determine whether you live or whether you live. I think it comes down now to a question of killing, and I think we can all agree that like killing is wrong, and there are laws to prevent that. There are laws that outlaw that, and I don't think that's unreasonable to say. Of course, it's a very different situation. There's a life in another person's like body, but and when it comes down to it, this is another person. The DNA is different. It's a matter of killing, and so yeah, I think that's how it ties the conception of life. That's how it ties into this discussion here.
We have a question from the audience that we keep getting, which is, and I guess it's directed to you, which is about, how do you argue with the statistic that if you make abortions illegal, women will still continue to get them, and in unsafe environments?
Yeah. That's a very good question, and I need to look more into that. I said that I have looked into facts and done research. I haven't necessarily been interviewed live stream before. That's something I do want to look into more, but I don't necessarily think that. I think even, people tend. This is my initial response, and like, okay, I could be wrong. I admit that, but this is what I'm thinking right now. What's going through my head. A lot of people refer to back alley abortions as these like terrible things where like medical instruments aren't even used, like hangers or just like very dangerous procedures. But actually, if you look at, I want to cite it because citing it will make it more credible. But I do remember reading this passage about how even I think it was 1960 this was written, saying that actually like abortions aren't dangerous anymore. Like any trained medical professional could, or not necessarily even an assistant can perform one and not have the danger of like those horror stories of like, again, like implements being used or like hangers. Like those were the stories I've heard, the dangers of back alley abortions. But even as early as like somewhere in the 1960s, that wasn't being done anymore. It was like less than 2% of whatever was happening. And so they can still be performed. Okay, maybe they're not going to be legal, but like I don't think people are going to be bleeding out in a back alley because a hanger was used, or I keep on saying that, but whatever implement that's not part of the medical procedure. And so I think it's an unwarranted fear. It's not like that sort of So
do you agree that those abortions will continue, and you're saying they won't be dangerous? They're not as dangerous as people might think, and you don't care, or you don't mind
that? Not necessarily that I don't care. I'm saying that I think a lot of people think that it's going to be a huge danger because a lot of abortions are going to happen anyway. Back alley abortions are going to happen, and that's even more dangerous for the woman. I'm saying, like, I'm realistic, right? Like, if it was illegal, like, I'm sure if people want to find a way, they can. But I think by outlawing abortion, we push people to consider alternatives. I think abortion, like, I'm a woman who just graduated. I'm 23, like, in college. There were so many services pushing for, like, right to your body, right to choose, right to abortion, all that, right? And that information was so readily available. No one stopped to pause to consider the alternatives. And all I'm saying is that I think just with this momentum, we need something to just help us to see that there are other choices to make. I don't think it's a choice when women feel compelled that to be a feminist, to be pro-woman, is to mean I need to choose an abortion or whatever, you know? And so...
We're not the ones telling women they have to choose abortion. We're the ones saying women should have a right to choose. But I want to say a mother just died, leaving her children behind because she drank bleach trying to perform an abortion on herself because she could not access a safe legal abortion. And that's while abortion remains technically legal in this country. Another woman did perform an abortion on herself with a coat hanger or attempt to, and was arrested and faced imprisonment for it. The idea that thousands of women will not die if abortion is made illegal is just false. If you say that abortion was safe starting as early as 1970, then you need to talk about the fact that thousands of women died from back alley abortions while abortions could be performed safely. Of course abortion's safe. That's our argument. Abortion is a safe medical procedure that millions of women choose. 1 in 3 women in their lifetime will have an abortion. Catholic women, married women, young women, women already with children, women without children. All kinds of people have abortions in this country, and they will continue to, because it is part of the reproductive life cycle that sometimes pregnancies happen in unintended ways, and that a woman should not be held hostage by that decision. And I think the question is, I guess the question I have is, are you okay with women dying from illegal abortions if abortion is made illegal?
No, I'm never okay with anybody dying, but at the same time, I guess, again, just to push back, if we're considering life beginning at conception, how many more deaths, there are deaths of children too, and half of them, men, or, male or female, half of those are going to be girls too. Those are women too, children dying from an abortion. Also, I think
so you're
definitely
okay with
like
a woman. You think that a woman dying from an unsafe abortion is an acceptable price to pay in order to prevent termination of pregnancies beginning at conception?
No, because if she
would
had,
value an embryo at conception over the life
I think they're
of a
equal.
woman.
I think they're both equal. And I also, if that's the given, then I guess logically flowing from my way of thinking, that makes sense. Also, if the woman had gone through with the birth, women dying from birth in America, very small percentage. If a woman went through with that birth, both her life and the child's life would be saved. If she had gone through an unsafe abortion, that child's life and her life, is now threatened. I also actually, I guess,
the
wanted
United
to...
States has one of the highest
maternal
mortality rates in the industrialized world.
Okay, no, I have, yes. But that said, I think this discussion also, I think, I don't know, I kind of like to, pull back and see, okay, well, why are we having this discussion to begin with? And I guess I would love to dialogue with you about it, here, if there's time. But I guess things that I often hear are, there are these, challenges we have in society, these, you had mentioned just discrimination against people of color, violence against women, all these things. And I think often when it comes to identity politics and this sort of thing, it's very, very black and white. And I actually think there's a lot more gray to these issues. They're very interconnected, things affect each other. And there's a lot of gray here. And I guess I'm just wondering, have you ever thought about, rather than just this is how it is and this is how the other treats it, if you've ever, been able to see the sort of gray that characterizes this debate. It's not simply pro-life, pro-choice, or I'm right, you're left. Has there ever been an opportunity to dialogue about the gray?
Well, I think it's pretty black and white, and I think we just got to the heart of the matter. Either you're willing to allow living women to die from unsafe, illegal abortions in order to prevent abortion, or you're not. Either you're for a woman's right to control her own body, and you see that as fundamental to her ability to achieve equality in this society, or you're not. I mean, I don't think there's a gray there. In people's personal decisions, there may be all sorts of complexities in the personal situations that people explore. As a society, if we are committed to protecting the legal right to abortion and access for abortion for anyone who needs it or wants it, I don't think that's a gray issue. I think that's a black and white issue. I think that's an issue of life or death for real human beings.
Cool. I guess I just have to agree to disagree at that point, which I hope you respect too. But I think there's a lot of gray. The reason that we're having this debate, for me, fundamentally, is because there are so many things that happen between a woman having to choose to get an abortion and conceiving a child, or even before that. I think there's a lot of gray. It's not simply about why is this woman having to think about getting an abortion to begin with? I think that's a question we should ask, and the answers that come from that, I think, will help us to see this issue clearer. There's a deeper root to this issue.
On a personal level, we can totally agree to disagree. That's fine with me. At a political level, if your side comes to clinics and harasses patients who are already faced with making choices for themselves, I and others will be here to defend those women, to defend Planned Parenthood, and to speak out against it. If your side tries to pass laws restricting abortion rights, we will organize and mobilize to defeat those laws. You can have your personal opinions, and you're totally entitled to them. You cannot legislate those opinions, and you cannot force those opinions on other people. And I will fight to defeat that political movement, because I think we have come too far to go back to the days of back alley abortions. We've gone too far to re-relegate women to second-class citizenship in this country.
But I do think even what you had said there self-contradicted yourself. You're saying that what you hold personally has no right to be legislated, and yet you so passionately are pushing for these things that you yourself hold as truth and self-evident.
I'm not the one passing laws saying women have to have an abortion.
No, but you're also you're advocating. I'm just saying it's interesting. It's something that I've observed, and you don't have to feel like it's contradicting yourself, but just me observing, just exactly what you said. I'm not one taking my personal values and making sure that legislation does get passed. I think if you are able to do that, then other people should also have the ability to do that. And through dialogue, through critically thinking about, okay, what is at the root of whatever it is we're advocating for, let's come to an informed decision. But I think that dialogue is supposed to happen, and if you're able to go ahead and passionately advocate for these things, I think pro-life individuals should very well have the freedom to passionately advocate for what we hold to be true.
But your movement's not about critical thinking. Your movement has terrorized Planned Parenthood clinics. Your movement has harassed abortion providers. Your movement has passed laws that have meant that women have gone to prison, have died, have had their lives fundamentally reshaped. It's not about critical thinking. I think that's what they call an alternative fact.
I hear you, and I want to apologize for whatever sort of experience you may have had with violence or just shaming or condemnation. That does not deserve to be there. Like I said, I'm 23. I probably wasn't around for that when that was happening. But as of now, right now, my friends who are in this movement, like me, who has recently come to this in college, we are pro-life, not simply pro-birth, but we desire the dignity and the thriving of every single human person. That means, whatever you hold as your belief, I think everybody should have a chance, and I want to apologize that if anybody ever made you or your friends feel that way. It's never about shaming. It's, I think, about information, letting people know, they have the right to choose, they have the right to life, it should never look that way. That said,
it's not about looking that way.
We live in
someone just bombed the Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado less than a year ago.
It's so important. Look at the media now, right? Everything is so negative. By me saying this, I'm not denying the fact that was wrong. That's wrong. I agree. And I think we can agree on that. But I also think that it's important to look at the good. There's so much, and it takes so much more effort to look at the good, but are we being grateful for the good things that are happening? Are we looking at the things that aren't just easy to target, easy to criticize? Even when it comes on a personal level, day to day, you know, like my sister, you know, there are so many things that like sometimes she does to annoy me, but like I need to make the effort to see the good that she can bring and the love that she has. Like, are we making that effort to see that in the people around us? I think oftentimes when it comes to big movements, we paint these broad strokes of black and white. Are we willing to go ahead and pay attention to the individual, their story, their life, hear them out, support them in all stages? I don't think we as a society are doing a good enough job at that. Me as a person, like, sure, I'm pro-life, but I can see ways that I can improve, and I guess that means that everybody has ways they can improve in those ways as well. And so, yeah, I think.
Wonderful. I thank you both so much, and I just want to say that in the comments, everybody is just so impressed by your dialogue and just how civil and how and how you're both making really wonderful points. So thank you so much for coming out. I know it's not easy, and I just want to say I think you were the only two people from this entire protest today that actually had a dialogue from either side, and that's very admirable. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Happy to debate anytime.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, thank